everyone. Welcome to More Than a Muse podcast. My name is Sadie.
I'm Stauney, and hello. We missed you last week, but we're back. Very excited because we're actually diving into fashion today, which is fun because the Met Gala was last week, and it always feels a little dystopian and Hunger Games District 1-y, but
it's also
fun.
A lot of fun. I like to look at the outfits, and I was very happy with this Met Gala. I thought it was really cool.
Too. I was like, this one was really fun. And then I heard a few people complaining that they're like, yeah, but there wasn't like a weird ways that you could take it. And I was like, I think that's why I liked it.
I think that's why I liked it. I feel like the theme was a little bit more like straightforward, you know?
Yeah, like fine tailoring, male menswear, like everyone just looked so good.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite look or one of your favorites?
Okay, I think Sabrina Carpenter looked absolutely stunning, as she always does. But man, I would wear Chapel Roan's outfit.
Yeah.
It looked so comfortable, but so her.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was just like, man, like that is the way to go to the Met Gala. She is in pants and a suit jacket. She is comfortable.
That is so valid.
Yeah.
I love Janelle Monáe's look. I don't know if you remember it with the timepiece and everything. That was just so cool. Also, Joey King.
She killed it.
Yeah, which
she
is like kind
good.
of a surprise, I think, because I don't know how well, I don't always love her looks, but she looked great, I think.
She looked really good. I also, who was it that had the dress made out of rulers?
Oh, yeah.
That one was clever.
Jenna Ortega, I think.
Yes, Jenna
Ortega.
Yeah, that was a fun way to take it.
Also, Diana Ross. Of course, yeah. She did great.
But yeah, all the women who got to wear like straight up menswear, I was like, oh, this is the formal party I would want to be at. Like, put me in some loose fitting pants and a jacket.
This is my time to shine. Also, did you see Demi Moore's look? That it was basically like, it looks like a dress with this like headpiece almost, but then when you look at it, it's a tie. Her dress is like a tie with the neck around. You should look it up.
Oh, that's what she was going for. Okay, I only saw pictures of the top, and I was kind of like,
it's a tie.
Yeah, that is clever.
Once I saw that, I was like, okay, I get it now. So yeah.
I know, there was some fun ones. I really enjoyed this one.
I did too. I don't think anything will ever beat Heavenly Bodies because that was incredible. But other than that, I had a great time with this one.
Yes. I also really loved the kitsch one, but just because that one was like the theme was go nuts. So
yeah, I'd want to do that again. I'm like, do that every year. Just be ridiculous.
Seriously, right? It's Met Gala. You might as well.
Might as well.
Yeah.
Why are we being classy?
But it's really fun that like ties in because we are talking about one of the most prolific costume designers of all time, probably.
Amazing.
Yes. She's the only costume designer to have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Wow.
And she's won 8 Oscars and was nominated for 30-something.
Cool.
So she is a woman worth mentioning. Also, right off the bat, I'll let you know The Incredibles?
Yeah.
The little designer.
Edna Mode. Yes.
So Edith Head was the inspiration for Edna Mode.
Okay, wait, I have heard of her now because I have heard that Edna was inspired by a real person. That's so
I
cool.
put this is a fun little sneak peek into what happens. I put this in our little More Than a Muse like group chat channel thing a couple of months ago when Sabrina Carpenter was copying some of the looks from some of these movies. And so I said, hey, fun fact, this is based on a real person. And that was when I found her. And now I'm covering her on the podcast. So that's a little shout out for our channel. If you want to know about some of these people ahead of time, we'll probably talk about them on there sometimes.
We'll probably shout them out.
Yes.
Amazing.
So very fun. But yeah, we can dive right in. It might be a little bit of a shorter episode. There's not a lot on her. There's a lot of videos, I'll say. I didn't have time to watch 16-hour-long videos.
That was the same thing with the last person I covered.
Yeah.
Like either 16 hours of video or a little brief.
Or like overview. 2 articles. Yeah. So it was like, man. But I do feel like she's worth knowing about for sure. Okay, so Edith Claire Posner is how she was born, was the daughter of Jewish parents Max Posner and Anna Levy. Her father was born as a naturalized American citizen from Germany who came to the United States in 1876. Her mother was born in St. Louis, Missouri, the daughter of an Austrian father and Bavarian mother, and they got married in 1895. And then he opened a little haberdashery, which failed within a year. What is a
I
haberdashery?
was about to ask.
It's such a fun word to say.
I know.
It's like men's clothing and accessories, like sewing, buttons,
Speaking of
zippers.
menswear.
Yeah.
Cool.
So he was doing repairs and selling little things for men's clothes, and then it didn't do very well. And like his business, their marriage also didn't survive.
Oh, man.
Which is such a bummer to lose two things at once. In 1905, her mother ended up remarrying, this time to a mining engineer, which I assume is a little bit more successful of a business, originally from Pennsylvania. And they frequently moved for the rest of her childhood because of her stepfather's jobs. The only place that Edith could later recall living during her early years was Searchlight, Nevada. That's how often they were moving that she was like, I remember one place.
Wow. Yeah.
And they both had, like, obviously it was her mother, but then her stepfather just adopted her as his child as well. Couldn't really find anything else about her father after this. So I don't know how involved he was in her life, but it sounds like her stepfather was willing to step up. Haha. And be a part of it. And then they both ended up converting to Catholicism because her stepfather was a Catholic. She was born in San Bernardino, California, and one set of her childhood, I didn't have what you would call an artistic or cultural background. We lived in the desert and we had burros and jackrabbits and things like that. So just out there in Nevada and California in the desert.
Cute.
She received her Bachelor of Arts degree in Letters and Sciences with honors in French from the University of California, Berkeley, and actually went on to earn a Master's of Arts degree in Romance Languages from Stanford University.
Oh,
and if
cool.
you're thinking, what does that have to do with fashion design? Nothing.
Yeah. Okay.
Because she actually went on, and her first job was a language teacher. She taught at the Bishop School in La Jolla teaching French, and then a year later took a position teaching Spanish at the Hollywood School for Girls, both in California. And then wanting a slightly higher salary, she was like, hey, I'll also teach art, even though she'd only briefly studied it in high school.
Amazing.
But we applaud her because to improve her drawing skills, she took evening classes at the Otis Art Institute and Chouinard Art College, which we talked about in our last episode.
Super
because of
cool.
Animation. A lot of animators came out of Chouinard. So she took the initiative and started teaching herself at these night classes and then became the art teacher as well.
Cool.
During this time period, she also ended up getting married to Charles Head, who was the brother of one of her classmates at Chouinard. And although the marriage ended in divorce only a couple of years after, and a couple of years after they had been separated for quite a while too, she continued to be known as Edith Head until her death. So she took his last name, and that's how she was known for the rest of her life. I'm not sure how entirely accurate this part is because I could only find it in like a YouTube video.
Cool.
But it makes sense. So we're going to say, as legend goes,
perfect.
Her two art students, the daughters of a director, invited her to the set for their father's new film. And she was immediately captivated by watching what happens behind the scenes on a movie set, because it's a whole new experience that you don't really get to see very often. And so she decided then and there that she was going to become a costume designer. And in 1923, she answered an ad for sketch artists and was hired by Paramount Pictures head of costume design Howard Greer.
Whoa.
She had no art design and costume experience other than teaching art classes and some of her night classes at Chouinard or the Otis Art Institute, like I said, so very rudimentary. And she did admit later that she borrowed other students' sketches for the job interview.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
Which we do not agree with. Obviously, plagiarism is very bad. However, by the time she admitted to it, she was already like the first assistant or whatever of Howard Greer, like already had a long, lustrous career. So she proved herself. And I mean,
yeah. That's all that matters.
She went on to win so many awards. So I'm like, she learned something, I guess, in all of this. Her first assignment was for a dress for Mae West in the film She Done Him Wrong. And Mae West apparently was notorious for being very difficult to work with and gave Edith some directions by saying, make something loose but tight.
But of course.
And somehow Edith was able to fulfill this ambiguous request and gave her a mermaid dress. So loose but tight. It had this gorgeous train. And the film ended up breaking box office records and saving Paramount from bankruptcy. Wow. So obviously the dress alone didn't do that. You have to have a good plot. But she was a part of that.
Totally.
Yeah. And then she began also designing costumes for silent films, The Wanderer in 1925. And even just 5 years later, she had established herself as one of Hollywood's leading costume designers.
Cool.
Of course, Paramount was one of the leading studios at the time. You had stars like Gloria Swanson and Clara Bow, who we've done an episode on, of course.
Out Taylor Swift and the Tortured Poets Department.
And though she only viewed them from a distance, she learned from Greer and his successor, Travis Benton, the importance of rapport between a star and a designer, which went on to be a part of her career. Like most of her interactions were with the stars and like trying to figure out what would work for them, what fit their character, and then designing based on that, which is a whole part of costume design I didn't really consider. That it's like you're working with this actor who also has preferences, and you can't just fit the character. You have to work with
figure out
with what they want and like how they want to appear and what they think their assets are. And during her height of her career, she was involved in 30 films a year.
What?
That's
crazy, that output.
So many. So another fun fact, of course, is because she, probably because she was a woman, let's be honest, she was featured in the studio publicity from the mid-1920s, but she was often overshadowed by Greer and Banton almost constantly. And she did become instrumental in conspiring against Banton. And then after his resignation in 1938, she became Paramount's lead designer. And then later that same year, the chief costume designer at Paramount, which was the first woman to hold the position. Wow. I don't know how she conspired against him, but it sounds like she didn't like him. And you know what? If I've learned anything about this woman, it's that she was not afraid of a little shady business practice to get where she wanted to go.
That's what I was just thinking. And you know what? Whatever. More power to her.
Yeah. In 1936, one of her most famous designs was this sarong for Dorothy Lamour in The Jungle Princess, which became this huge fashion craze. And then her fame increased with the sarong dress in the movie The Hurricane in 1937. And then she also did a mink-lined gown for Ginger Rogers, Lady in the Dark in 1944. And that ended up being quite controversial because it was the middle of wartime and she had an actress in a gown lined with mink, which is not cheap. But everyone was talking about it, which helps with notoriety.
I was going to say, sometimes there's no such thing as bad press, unfortunately.
Yes, especially when you're just the costume designer, not the one in charge of the studio budget. Who are they really going to blame for it?
True.
Yep. So one thing that she was really well known for is her ability to reflect the character in her designs rather than her own style, which directors loved because that's what they want, right? Like the character to shine through the plot, not just the stylist to be like, oh. And so she worked with Ginger Rogers, Betty Davis, Grace Kelly, Audrey Hepburn, and Elizabeth Taylor. And she was a favorite among a lot of them. Like they wanted to work with her every time. And her job obviously was to change people into something that they weren't. She said it was a cross between camouflage and magic. There isn't anyone I can't make over.
That's fun. I love that.
Yeah. And Lucille Ball once even remarked, Edith doesn't tell, which I don't know entirely what that means, but I'm guessing she's saying that she could make you look better than you would have ever imagined you were capable of yourself, and she would not rat you out.
Which that is a great thing in a costume director. You're going to be in movies on screen. I can only imagine.
Especially before they had a lot of editing and stuff that they do now.
True.
Yeah, people are lucky nowadays. In 1940, she married art director Weird Ernan, I think is how you say his name. And they actually ended up staying married until he died in 1979. There is nothing else about him in the rest of this. So I'm going to assume that it was a very happy marriage.
Yeah. A 30-year marriage is great.
Yes.
Almost 40.
And also, she became very well known for her bob haircut, her thick glasses, and her two-piece suits, which she wore a lot of. So very menswear. And she is also very well known for her work with Hitchcock. She did so much with him. In 1946, they started working together on his film Notorious. And then because it worked out so well, she ended up being like loaned from Paramount, is what they would call it.
Oh, yeah.
So they would basically pay a fee to Paramount to like take
Use
her
her
out as like a contract employee and then like work on Hitchcock
Cool.
and other films. So a lot of stars also would say, I won't work with anyone other than Edith. So then they would like loan out Edith to go work with the stars at the other movies. She was also nominated for Academy Awards every single year from 1949, which was the first year that the costume category existed, through 1966. Can you imagine being nominated every single year for 20 years?
That's crazy.
Yeah. And she won 8 times, which is a lot. It's a record for men and women, I think, in the costume design section.
So cool.
And she would often refer to her Oscars as my children.
Incredible.
Which, how can you not? They're a bunch of little gold men.
Yeah, why not? Yeah. Of all the awards, those could be your children.
There's a really funny photo of her with all of them sitting there. So I'll have to post that for sure. And then, of course, as most things happen, like art reflects life, life reflects art. So her costumes would frequently influence fashion off of screen. She took credit for the sarong trend, which she probably can since her movie came out right as it got popular. And then the troubadour pants that she created for Audrey Hepburn and Sabrina, and in Funny Face. And then the clothes in films like All About Eve and A Place in the Sun helped shift fashion leadership from Paris to Hollywood, which was a major thing during that time period. I think we have a later episode planned on it where for a while, Paris wasn't the head of fashion anymore. It was Hollywood. That's where the best fashion was coming out of. I don't think that's the case anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know really where it's coming from, but during that time period, Hollywood was the place. Yeah.
Cool.
A couple of her wins. So she won Best Costume Design for The Heiress in 1949. She has basically the plot of the film is that this naive woman turns into a resolute heiress. And so she was able to do all of it in black and white, which is amazing, but have somber tones and period accurate silhouettes that show the emotional journey of the character. They go throughout the movie. The next one was Samson and Delilah in 1950. And that one luckily was in color. And she got to do these lavish costumes with intricate detailing and rich fabrics because obviously it's biblical.
Yep.
Lots of drapery and jewel tones. All About Eve was another black and white film where she would do sophisticated wardrobes that would show off the character's complex relationships and ambitions. Evening gowns, tailored suits, it all became the iconic representations of 1950 fashion. And so she did the costumes for all of the people in these movies, mind you.
So cool.
A Place in the Sun in 1954 was another black and white movie. Her designs for Elizabeth Taylor in this film are among her most celebrated because of the film's romantic and tragic tones. She has a strapless white tulle and satin gown that's worn by Elizabeth Taylor that became emblematic of 1950s Hollywood glamour and kind of reminds me of later, Marilyn Monroe's white dress. I think.
Totally.
Yeah, that would be very...
I just looked up pictures of, that's a beautiful dress. Incredible.
Yes, the epitome at that time. Roman Holiday, which was Audrey Hepburn's first movie in black and white. She was able to show like the simplicity but elegance of the character because she's pretending to be a commoner in the film, but she's obviously still royal. And Audrey Hepburn loved her after this movie. And then some things happened for the next one. So she established this wonderful rapport with Audrey Hepburn in Roman Holiday. Hepburn actually wore her final scene dress to the award show because she loved it so much and called it her lucky charm. And she also went up and accepted the Best Costume Design Oscar with Edith Head. So they were like chums. But then it was Audrey Hepburn's breakout role, and Audrey Hepburn exploded after this, which you can't really blame.
No.
She's so talented. We obviously already have an episode on her too. So when Sabrina came along a year later, which lovely movie, highly recommend, she had become the muse, Audrey Hepburn had become the muse of Hubert da Vinci, who is this
Okay.
designer, and he became like the exclusive designer for Audrey Hepburn. So she started like shooting down all of Edith Head's ideas and saying we should have da Vinci do it. Like talking about how great she was and everything, and like
Got it.
she was a brand new star and all the things.
Yeah.
But the funny thing that happened is that Edith Head was the only one credited for costume design. Da Vinci wasn't ever officially hired. He just insisted on being there because Audrey Hepburn was in the movie. And so Edith Head got full credit for it.
Amazing.
And she still takes credit for the creation of the Sabrina neckline, which I think is like the off-shoulder pointed one. I might be wrong. I will do a post on it. And also just some of the other looks for it. So Edith won the Oscar. And when she went up and accepted it, she didn't even mention him. And it was her way of being like, I'm the one who actually had to do the work. You were just there being annoying.
Like he like strong-armed his way onto there.
Yeah, he wasn't credited for a reason. So, yeah, so she took credit for a lot of the things and was just like, that's how it is. And there's even this quote from her where she talks about the fact that couture has always stolen things from costume design and that like they tend to take credit for a lot of things saying that they did it first.
Totally.
And I think it might be a two-way route. Like, I think you could also say that costume design has stolen from couture and claim that they did it first. It's just hard in fashion, right? That's the point. They all kind of exist. Yeah. So an interesting little controversy there. Her other two Oscars are for The Facts of Life, which is another black and white film. She apparently was able to convey a lot of like emotional states of the characters and like their personal growth throughout. And then her last one was for The Sting, that was set in the 1930s. And she did a ton of meticulous attention to the details of the period clothing. So like pinstripe suits, fedoras, pocket watches that had this like authenticity that was apparently like completely unmatched, which is amazing considering there's no Google. There's the thing, and she's making a period accurate film.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So very important. And then just like a couple of the famous dresses. I already talked about the sarong in Jungle Princess. And then Elizabeth Taylor's gown in Place in the Sun. Another one was Grace Kelly's aquamarine dress at the 1955 Oscars. She designed it for her, and it was considered one of the most beautiful Oscar dresses ever. And has often been celebrated in fashion retrospectives. The wardrobe for Audrey Hepburn and Sabrina and Funny Face. So specifically the Chorador pants and the Sabrina neckline, and then the slim cropped trousers that ended up becoming really popular for that time period. And then Kim Novak's ensembles in Vertigo, which was an Alfred Hitchcock film. Then also, this is the one that I mentioned in the chat. In the movie What a Way to Go, there is this dress that has no back.
Oh, okay.
Like no back at all. Yeah. And you never see the front of it. And so there's always been this mystery of what did the front look like. But she knew that she didn't have to create a front. So she did it all with just the back. And it's like a fun thing. There's like a montage in the What a Way to Go. It's by Shirley MacLaine. So they have a whole montage of different fashion. And a lot of people are like, wow, Edith must have just had fun. Like, it doesn't even look like she had a budget. Like, she just got to create this montage of this lady wearing all of these things. But the fun part about the backless What a Way to Go dress is that Sabrina wore it at the Grammys, but actually had the front. So the back just has two strands of pearls and then the little clasp holding it to the bottom. And you literally can't see the front. Like, it looks like she has nothing on. And Sabrina turned around and wore that blue feathered number that had the exact same pearl detail on the back.
Amazing.
Yeah,
That's
little
so fun.
Edith Head homage there. And then, of course, she used media to her advantage. She did a lot of TV appearances, licensed Vogue patterns, She appeared on You Bet Your Life with Groucho Marx and donated her winnings to charity, which was a game show. So
Amazing.
very fun. She also appeared on Lucy Gallant, The Pleasure of His Company, The Oscar, and Columbo, Requiem for a Falling Star, which I think were all guest appearances as herself. So we've talked about this, the amount of fame you have to reach to be able to guest as yourself.
Yep.
Amazing. She also authored 2 books, The Dress Doctor and How to Dress for Success, which were released in 59 and 67 and have actually been edited and re-released.
Cool.
I think there's still some available, but it's not currently in print. It's a little bit harder to find. She ended her career at Universal, actually, because Paramount didn't renew her contract when she turned 70. Age discrimination.
Totally. Also, I want to note then that basically she was nominated for a year, every single year, until her contract with Paramount ran out.
Yeah.
So it's not like she just stopped being good at her job. They didn't renew her contract.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And every single year, oh, man.
That's amazing. That's crazy.
Yeah.
They wouldn't renew it at that point.
I know. They were probably like, go retire, lady. And she was like, no.
No.
And she didn't. She moved to Universal at the invitation of Alfred Hitchcock, who of course loved her. A lot of studio-based production at the time was waning, so a lot of the stars she had worked with had retired, therefore she wasn't getting requested as often. So she started designing for TV. Cool. She did Bewitched and Dora's Wardrobe, and that's when she did her cameo in Columbo. And then her assistant once said that she would rush to be seen by Universal tour trams. So she would stick some pencils in her bun, and she said, heaven help if you got in her way, kind of embracing her role as a public icon. Because with her iconic look and how notorious she became, like, people knew who she was. Yeah. And imagine knowing the name and the appearance of a costume designer nowadays. Like, it's just not. Yeah. In the late 1970s, she was asked to design a uniform for the women of the U.S. Coast Guard, which was an assignment she called a highlight. And for that, she ended up receiving the Meritorious Public Service Award. Cool. So love that. And she won her 8th and final Oscar for The Sting, which was in 1974. But her last project was Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, for which she recreated 1940s noir costumes. And the film was released posthumously and dedicated to her because of the fact that she had passed away before it came out. She died only 4 days before her 84th birthday from myelofibrosis and is buried in California, of course. In 1974, while she was still alive, she did receive a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And she is the only costume designer, like I said, to have ever done this. She's the only one. Cool. No other costume designers have gotten a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. So that just shows how prominent she is.
Yeah.
Like I also mentioned, Edna Mode from the Pixar's The Incredibles was directly inspired by her. The resemblance is ridiculously uncanny.
Yeah,
like,
I'm looking at photos right now. This is amazing.
Yeah, like if you look at a picture of her, you're like, oh, so Edna Mode.
So that's Edna. Yep.
Yeah. And even the name, like Edna Mode, Edith Head.
Yes.
Yeah,
amazing.
like you can tell the director actually voiced Edna too.
Oh, fun.
The director of The Incredibles, which was very funny. And Brad Bird, and he said that she was the clearest influence. He said Edna's famous line, "No capes, even echoes," Head's practical design philosophy. As The Guardian put it in 2004 article on the film, Edna Mode, the diminutive, imperious designer to the superhero world, is a clear nod to Edith Head, who ruled the Hollywood costume department for decades with a tiny iron fist and large dark glasses. In blending wit, style, and authority, Edna Mode plays loving tribute to the woman who defined cinematic costume design for decades.
That's a great quote. Also, I am shook that Edna Mode is voiced by a man. That's crazy.
I think if you go back and listen, you can hear it. But he's obviously a very talented voice actor.
Oh, of course. But I'm like now thinking about her voice, and I'm like, oh, is that a man's voice? Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I just love the part like they must have gotten to a certain point on the film where they're like, oh, we should have a designer come in and be a part of it because he needs a new suit. Totally. And then they're like, oh, who should we base it on? And he was like, oh, I know who we should base it on.
do this on.
and it will
Like,
be
the most
perfect.
iconic.
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
thick glasses, the black bob with bangs, and
Perfect.
they said her tiny iron fist. From what I understand, she was a very petite woman, but
Amazing.
this was just fun, like a quote about her from the article I found. It's a little long, but I wanted to read it. Edith Head was an American film costume designer who won a record 8 Academy Awards for Best Costume Design between 1949 and 1973, making her the most awarded person in the Academy's history.
So
Head is
cool.
considered one of the greatest and most influential costume designers in film history. Nominated 35 times for the Academy Award for Best Costume Design, she was obviously one of the most prolific and one of the most celebrated movie designers. A pioneering woman in decades that encompassed both the heyday and the demise of Hollywood's highly competitive studio system, had flourished in that fluctuating atmosphere, proving herself perfectly capable of the kind of ruthlessness, arrogance, and self promotion necessary for success. And like I said, very true. She
Mm.
wasn't afraid to be a little shady to get what she needed. But perhaps the key reason Edith had succeeded was a supreme ability to make herself essential. In the studio, surrounded by starlight, she downplayed herself as little Edith in dark glasses and the beige suit. That's how I survived. By the time she won her last Oscar, Edith had fashioned herself into as much of a celebrity icon as the stars she costumed. True, part of her achievement resulted from her willingness to ring her own bell, but most of all, her success came because she was a realist about life in the Hollywood Dream Factory. You gotta give them what they want, kid. If you don't, they'll find somebody who will.
Nice.
And that's Edith Head.
Wow, what a great person to learn about.
I know, right? She's so fascinating. I definitely don't have the ability to withstand the Hollywood Dream Factory. I would have been pushed
Mm-mm.
out. I'm a sensitive little person, but I applaud her for her ruthlessness.
Yeah,
Yeah, even if it's not exactly like moral in a lot of ways, like she knew what she had to do. And you know what? Like a lot of people were probably fighting like that.
totally.
Yeah.
And I do think there is something to be said about the quote, the you got to give them what they want, kid. If you don't,
Mhm.
they'll find somebody who will. Because I think there's two sides of this where it's obviously there's like artistic integrity. Obviously, there's like, no, but I don't feel this. I don't want to do this. But I think that it's like an important thing to realize that it's if your artwork is a sum of many parts, like you have to let go of the ego and
Yeah.
realize that maybe sometimes you have to like let go of certain things in favor of making the best thing as like a whole if you're making like art with other people and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think that I know that this isn't exactly what she's talking about, but I think like being here in Nashville and like when you're writing with people, producing music with people, like playing with people, like it's awkward when there's one person that's no, I don't want to do that, especially if they're not the one who's in
Oh,
charge,
yeah.
because
Mhm.
every setting there is someone who's in charge, whether it's the
Yeah.
artist, this, and you have to be aware of that and you have to be accommodating to that. And I think it's just like cool when people accept it and they don't use it as like a bad thing because it's not a
Yeah.
bad thing. It's parameters. It gives
Yeah.
you license to know what you can and can't do and how you can kind of shine within that. So
Yeah, like
it's
what's the
important
quote
lesson.
in Where the Crawdads Sing, where she talks about like in nature, sometimes you have to be the most ruthless in order to survive?
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I haven't read that book, but I've seen the movie.
In nature, out yonder where the crawdads sing, these ruthless seeming behaviors actually increase the mother's number of young over her lifetime, and thus her genes for abandoning offspring in times of stress are passed on to the next generation. And on it happens in humans too. So,
Kind of brutal. But
but
also
like
at the same
essential.
time, like I think that there's like a level of it's a hard industry, period, and it's a hard life. And I think like art industries are hard to break into. And unfortunately, I think that like sometimes the people who are in power take advantage of the fact that like people want so badly to be in this industry and to like put up with things. And obviously that's not what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
But on the other end, it's like, if this is something you want to do, fight for it. Do what you
Hmm.
can
Yeah.
to
No,
give yourself as much of a leg up as you can.
yeah, I think there's a lot to look into that where it's just, we're not saying obviously plagiarize your art or something, but
Yeah, or
like,
put up with abuse because it's what you
yeah,
really want in the
no.
end. Yeah.
But there's something about having ruthless seeming behaviors, you know, able. Have you ever heard the statistic that women who go in for cancer treatment are often considered openly hostile and like
Mm.
angry at their doctors compared to men? And they realized it was just women who questioned the doctor's decisions and advocated for
Wow.
themselves.
That's
And they were
crazy.
like, "They're so mean and so rude," and it was just them asking questions and, like, making sure that their care was being prioritized.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like there's something about women where I think that like anytime you try to put yourself first, you're just immediately considered ruthless and like kind of a jerk.
And also, why is like ruthlessness in some situations, like why is that a bad thing?
Yeah.
A little bit of a personal anecdote, and I'm going to be as vague as possible, but there's somebody that I know that has had a lot more success than I have had personally. And sometimes that can bother me because I didn't think that they were very nice. And I've heard a lot of stories about them, of them not being very nice to other people, or just like being like, no, I'm a big deal. Treat me like a big deal. And for a while, I was very bitter about it. Maybe I still sound bitter, but that's fine.
Yeah.
But the thing that I've realized and learned is I'm like, you know what though? I bet that attitude that rubbed me the wrong way, that's a reason why that person, like, that's the same reason, like, attitude that has brought them so far in life. And there's a balance with that. But the confidence that you need to say, I don't care if I'm not as experienced as other people, or I don't care if maybe there's someone better for the job. I want to be here and I think I have something that I can offer.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for that attitude.
I feel like it's one of the best ways to get over what's
like
it
imposter
called?
syndrome?
Yeah, imposter syndrome. I think you just have to tell yourself, like, no, I belong here because I want to.
Totally.
And that's all that matters.
And I think a lot of the times, especially with art, when it's so subjective, it just really does take one person, like, being like, no, I think this is best.
Yeah.
Because the amount of times I'm even, like, this morning, I had a rehearsal with my band for a show that I'm putting on in a couple weeks. And, like, I had to catch myself of being like, no, I think it should be like that. Well, I don't know. Do you think so? Do you think that's good? Do you think that's bad? No.
It's like, no, you're in charge.
I'm in charge.
Yeah.
I need to make an authoritative stance here on what I think is the best thing to do. I need to be a little bit more ruthless and not care. Like, maybe everyone else in the band is like, that sounds like crap. That can't matter because
and it's
I
like,
have
it doesn't
to like
matter.
it.
No, I agree completely.
But it's scary.
It's hard. Yeah, it's tough. And like at the end of the day, a lot of the times you don't get the call. You know, I can't go into work and be like, well, I want to do it this way.
Totally. And then that goes along to the, you got to give them what they want. And if you don't, they'll find somebody. It's like knowing when it's your time to advocate for yourself and knowing when it is your time to do the job at the best you can.
Like they said,
that's a hard
head
balance.
down in her tan suit, get the work done, and then also make sure that you're the one that they want.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot to learn from her. And I think she is a very inspiring woman in many ways, even if it's just to go, crazy that like stealing other students' sketches can get you 33 nominations later in life. 35.
At a certain point, she wasn't stealing other people's
I know. That's what's crazy is that it's like, can you believe that the most prolific costume designer in Hollywood got her job from other people's sketches?
Also wasn't even an art teacher. Like, said, I can teach art. And then as she's like doing her first year of teaching is like taking drawing classes at night to make sure she can do it.
Honestly,
that's crazy.
Like, it makes you think that all this stuff about they used AI for their admissions essay or they used an AI help on their resume, like, maybe it just doesn't matter. Like, you use what tools you have available to you, and if they can do the job, they'll do the job. They'll shine. Like, if not, you can fire them. Like,
that's true.
Maybe everyone just needs to stop worrying so much about how people are, like, applying for things and focus more on, like, the person that is applying.
The output?
Yeah. Like, what they're actually capable of.
Point. Yeah.
Anyway,
True.
I feel like lessons that we learned from this.
Interesting things to consider. Thank you, Edith Head, for what you've done for us today.
Yes. And now every time you watch Incredibles, you can think of the little woman with bob haircut and thick glasses who ruled with a tiny fist, because I know I will.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you for joining us, listeners, for another episode here with More Than a Muse. We'll be back next Monday, of course. And come say hi on Instagram. You can leave a rating or review. You can come check out our website. We have our More Than a Muse March Madness merch up still. And
yes.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.